Hello again, and welcome to Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin. We are coming to you live from Rigel Studios here in Las Vegas, Nevada. This show is about guns, related politics, and self-defense issues. Fired Up is on our website, firedupwithbobirwin.com. A new show is posted every Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific Time. New shows also appear on YouTube and numerous other media. The audio feed is rebroadcast for radio listeners Saturdays at noon on the Nevada Talk Network. You can check out KELY1230.com for a station in your area. Questions and comments, you can send an email to me at bob@firedupmail.com or leave a message on my office recorder at home, 702-257-1060. If you leave contact information, we will respond with text or email or telephone. Questions directed to our guest will be forwarded. In this case, the guest will give his own contact information directly, but if you lose it somewhere, you can send it to me and I will forward it. There are several hundred defensive uses of firearms every week in the United States, rarely covered by any mainstream media. So we always present a few of those for our listeners' education. Some are good shootings, most are good shootings. Some are questionable. Once in a while there's one that's just plain wrong, but all are educational for firearms owners. Individual incidents are generally adjudicated under local law. So the advice given here might not apply to listeners in different jurisdictions. So be careful. If you are involved in a real case, you need to talk to an attorney in the area you live in, and either myself or my guest can refer to you to attorneys that handle these types of things in any state now. The incidents are as reported, except as is Fired Up policy, we generally delete the names of the individuals involved. My guest today is California and Nevada attorney Donald J. Green. Don, welcome to the show again. A little bit of your background, if you could.
Well, thank you again, Bob, for your viewers and listeners who haven't either seen your show before or seen me at gun shows. My name is Don Green. I'm a lawyer in California and Nevada, principally based in Nevada. And I've been practicing now 36 years in California and 35 years in Nevada. The emphasis of my practice for your viewers and your listeners is gun-related issues, either self-defense, obtaining firearms, sales of firearms, purchases of firearms, obtaining concealed weapons permits, problems associated with background checks, representation before administrative agencies, either the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and FBI appeals. So we have a very broad spectrum when it comes to gun laws, but we specifically tailor our points to your particular case. You can reach me 24 hours a day on my cellular at area code 702-409-8239. Thank you, Bob.
Okay. Turn my cell phone off because I made that mistake last show, I believe. This first incident comes from Fox News 8. It's reported on the 4th of this month, a few days ago, in Cleveland, Ohio. Police are searching for two men who attempted to rob the Clark Deli on West 73rd Street on Sunday morning. The owner of Clark Deli told Fox 8 two men concealing their faces and wearing hooded sweatshirts entered at 10 in the morning, unusual time for a robbery. He told reporters he was shaking and scared for his life when the two men tried to rob him, but he refused to back down. One of the would-be robbers tried to get the owner to open the cash register. That's when the owner said he pulled out his gun and shot at the two men. This 80-year-old owner added when the first robber tried to force his way behind the counter to open the cash register, he saw a gun in the robber's hand. I shot one shot, then he got down and ran. The other robber went to the end of the store and the owner went after him, pointing his gun, and the robber, that second robber, would-be robber, asked him, "Please don't shoot me."
Yes.
Bullets from the owner's gun shattered the glass counters. or some glass coolers rather, right across from the counter in the store. The 80-year-old victim added that just 2 weeks ago he was the victim of another attempted robbery at his deli, but it involved a different subject. He described what happened during the last armed robbery attempt. I found a stainless steel gun to my head. When the gunman chased him around the store until I pointed my gun at his face, that gunman also ran from the store. Pretty good. Despite the attempted armed robbery, he kept his deli open for his loyal customers. He has owned the Clark Deli for more than 40 years. This is a courageous guy here, obviously. Cleveland police are still looking for the robbers. Had the deli owner not been armed, the result of both robberies, no doubt, would have been very, very different. Don, you want to look at this?
Yes. Bob, I want your listeners and your viewers to understand that this could happen not necessarily just in a store, but in a parking lot, at Walmart, at your home, at a picnic. Notice the time of day, it's 10 a.m. So these perpetrators are not going to look at the clock and make sure that it's always dark when you have a situation. It's 10 a.m., the deli's open to the public, and they walk in, masked on their face and hooded shirts or hooded t-shirts. These men are not collecting for the Girl Scouts or the Red Cross. They're there to rob you. Now, at the moment that the that the business owner knows that he's going to be robbed, he has the presence of mind to assess the situation in milliseconds. So this is an 80-year-old man. Perhaps he's had some training, but he's definitely had some experience with the firearm, because just a short time before this, there was another attempted robbery where another perpetrator tried to use a firearm. But in this case, when there was the movement of a robber to try to get the cash register open, and then the shop owner of the deli, seeing that what he perceived to be was a firearm, at that moment there was great bodily injury, the threat of great bodily injury or death. You don't have to check out to see if the firearm is operational or if the firearm is an airsoft. Which, with some of the makes that they have today, you can't tell. And you certainly can't ask the perpetrator, may I look at your weapon to see if it's operational? Because then you may be dead, or at least you may be harmed. So the 80-year-old man, presence of mind, took it on himself, shoots at one of the perpetrators, possibly hits him, and then there were a couple of, perhaps another shot, maybe not, but at least we know that a glass cabinet or a glass cooler was hit by the firearm, by a round. And then we have the second perpetrator crouching towards the door in the corner. Please don't shoot me. Now, again, we have the shop owner has the presence of mind not to shoot. And that's very important, because he said, I shot one shot. So in this case, I think that the police aren't going to have too much trouble in viewing this as a self-defense or a defense of property while you're there at the property. So very, very crucial. You can't take a gun to a gunfight. So suppose that they were attacking they were going to rob his storage unit, and he found out about the robbery, then took the gun there. Can't do that. You're going to get charged with assault with a deadly weapon, manslaughter, or even murder.
We are we're kind of digress here a little bit from our normal show. We have a horrible thing going on in the Nevada legislature right now. We have received information that with our new Democrat governor and our new Democrat control of the Senate and the Assembly, the upper and lower house in our state, that next week, by the time some of you see this rebroadcast, there will be legislation voted on and going through that will ban so-called assault weapons and what they call high-capacity magazines, what we call standard capacity magazines. There are a couple of rather vague bill draft requests at the moment. Don may have better information than I do on that. But this is likely to go through the legislature next week, and I wanted to give Don some time to address this is really going to be a disaster for gun owners in Nevada. So you have the floor.
Thank you, Bob. First of all, in Nevada, a bill draft request is just that. It's a draft of some proposed legislation. It's made by the public. It's made by officers, constitutional officers, such as the state treasurer, the attorney general, the controller's office, heads of the various agencies in Nevada, or it can be presented by individual members of the Nevada Senate or the Nevada Assembly. Now, our Senate and our Assembly only meet an odd number of years for approximately 120 days. We do not have a full-time legislature in Nevada. But in this case, there have been rumors circulating, principally from a highly placed person within the Republican Party who says that as early as next week, that would be the week of, the 11th of March, that there may very well be a bill draft request banning assault weapons and or high-capacity magazines, or as we call them, standard magazines. Let's look at history. In late January, early February, we had a proposal for the new background check law, which won't become effective until January 1st, 2020. We had that presented like on Monday. There were hearings which I attended, and I testified at that hearing on that Tuesday for 2 minutes, is all we were given to testify. There were probably several hundred people testifying for the background check and testifying against the background check. I was neutral because it contained 3 points which I wanted to see in that law. Neutral in the sense that background checks are going to, they're a thing of the future, so why not fight them, but make sure it's done right. But in any event, here's the sequence. It's introduced into the Assembly on Monday. Tuesday, the public hearing. The Assembly passes, the Senate passed it on Wednesday. The Assembly passed it on Friday. Governor signs it, and it'll be law effective January 1st, 2020. That's how fast these things can go. Now, I have not seen anything formal that is in the public record on a bill draft request as of this morning. But as of yesterday, as of 4:09 p.m., there were rumors circulating on the internet, quote, a very reliable source in northern Nevada, that the legislature is going ahead with an assault weapon and high-capacity magazine ban next week, and it will almost certainly pass, end quote. Now, again, a bill draft request can be circulated and can be proposed anytime during the legislative session. It doesn't have to be next week. So if it does go next week, again, we need to watch out to see if it's going to be run through like the background check was just a month ago. Now, in Nevada, on November 15th, 2018, approximately 1 week after the Nevada elections, we had a show here on the Guns and Glory Network. And my notes for that show indicated the following proposals for Nevada for proposed legislation, as we had contacted a number of Democratic senators, Democratic Assembly members, and a couple who had actually won the election. One was the background check law, which passed. Second was the ban on bump stocks, which was presented in the Nevada Assembly, which is one of the high-profile changes to firearms policy, will be coming up on very soon through Democratic Assemblywoman Sandra Huareggi has submitted a bill. Now, I haven't seen all of the bill, but it does definitely ban the bump stocks. And we had predicted that in November. Plus, there'll be possibly the ban on assault type rifles and weapons, and that would include high capacity magazines such as a Glock, Springfield Armory, and many other pistols which are out there. The registration of all assault rifles, as they have in California. A total ban on high capacity magazines, which we have stayed that in California, where there's a federal court order which halts California's version of the law which prohibits the possession or purchase of any magazines which hold more than 10 rounds. And that's whether it's a rifle or a pistol. So we can possibly see that. There's possibly a ban on ammunition sales, which is sort of like what's going on in California. There'll be background checks on all firearms sales which will be proposed. Doesn't matter whether they're private. And this is what the feds are trying to do. And just last week, the federal government the Senate had one vote and the House had another vote. The Senate had a proposed vote proposed by Senator Dianne Feinstein on a total ban of all assault rifles. And there were well over 100 types of weapons which were identified in this legislation. Now, coming up, the House of Representatives, and this is where Nevada comes in, the House of Representatives will take up 2 separate background check measures. Next Wednesday, the House will consider the bipartisan background checks law. That's where they're trying to get the Democrats to come over, and they're trying to say, look, we want background checks on all firearm sales, no matter where they are, online and at gun shows. Then they're going to talk about on Thursday the enhanced background checks, which would extend the time for the FBI to evaluate your application under the Form 4473, which now takes 3 business days, but they want to expand that. In California, you have a 10-day waiting period, and I think that 10-day period is going to become, or at least will be proposed as a matter of federal law. And in Nevada, I think that's coming. There will now possibly be a ban on transfers of firearms without first registering the firearms. Now that gets to our red flag law, which was going to be proposed, the preemption law, which came into effect in 2015, which literally canceled all of the gun registration. But a former Republican Senator, Michael Robertson, when the GOP controlled the House, now that law is going to be possibly revamped and reworked so that there will be a preemption, so that the Nevada legislature will control everything when it comes to firearms. When it will also have possibly the red flag law, which is where you have a person who is perhaps is mentally unstable, and his neighbors, his family, law enforcement, or someone can say, wait a minute, my neighbor, my brother-in-law, my sister has a firearm and we want it taken away from her. Now, we had that in the 2017 legislature, but because the Republicans were in control, it did not pass. I have a feeling that's going to pass along the lines of the state of California, which is going to be almost impractical, not impossible, but impractical to get your firearms back. I believe that the Nevada will also add more categories of prohibited persons who own, possess, or purchase firearms. I haven't seen anything on the concealed weapon except that there is Assembly Bill 217. And this is where a person who has applied for an order for protection against domestic violence or an order for protection against violence in the Justice Court can receive priority rather than the 120 days in obtaining a concealed weapon permit. Now, anyone can go apply for an order for protection. Your neighbor, the person that lives down the street, somebody who works at Burger King, and with this Assembly Bill 217 being proposed, I can foresee that a lot of abuses when it comes to, well, I'll just go ahead and go get a protective order and you're going to lose all your guns. Yeah. That's something that we're going to see. That's the only thing that I see right on the books right now for a concealed weapons permit. Again, we don't have any specifics. How much time do we have? A couple minutes?
I don't know, how's time running?
Got it. Okay, so I didn't mean to digress there to members of the audience, but we need to double check. On this assault weapons ban, there is an assault weapons type registration in California, and with the new configurations of the weapons in California with these bullet buttons, we're going to see a number of changes both to the types of weapons, not just assault rifles, but we're going to see any high capacity magazine or perhaps higher caliber rifles, which are also going to be subject to this ban, as is the federal version of the statute. We can take a look also at an issue which is coming up as of February 19, 2019. I'm not sure if your listeners and your viewers are aware, but in Nevada, we have the 13 counties, and we have the sheriffs of each of the counties who are charged by the Nevada Constitution and by local regulation to uphold the Constitution of the United States and to uphold the Nevada Constitution and all the laws. On February 19, 2019, Eureka County Sheriff Jesse Watts sent a letter to our governor, Stephen Sisolak, in which Sheriff Watts says, "I am not going to enforce the new background check law between private individuals because I believe it is a violation of the Constitution, and I believe that it will infringe on the liberties and the rights and privileges of responsible and, quote, law-abiding citizens who have broken no laws." Now, not to plug in a radio station, but if you go to AM 670 in the Las Vegas area, Sheriff Watts' letter, which is very eloquently written, is on their website. But again, enforcement becomes the issue. Additionally, in Nevada, we have another assembly bill which is coming into play, and that would be the taxes on out-of-state gun sales. Right now, please recall that for the background check law, which became effective, which was enacted in 2016, but subsequently declared unenforceable, and now parts of it are going to be enforceable under the 2019 legislation. I had filed a lawsuit on behalf of a private individual who was engaged in the selling of his estate weapons. He had a number of these and had sold them over a period of time at some gun shows. Now, in that case, with the input from Bob Irwin, and Bob and I talked about this for over a year, we had filed a lawsuit which says that the background check impermissibly created a tax and was therefore unenforceable as void for vagueness because it did not include the tax. The Nevada Attorney General and the Nevada Department of Taxation entered into a settlement with us whereby they issued a ruling which says that if the background check law becomes enforceable, there will be no tax consequence between the federal firearms licensee, buyer, and the seller. And Assembly Bill 113, which was proposed by Republican Assemblywoman Robin Titus, related to Dina Titus as a House member from Nevada, would amend the state law by prohibiting federal firearms licensees from charging a sales tax when they bring in the weapon from the out of state. Now that's probably going to run afoul of federal law, which several years ago the U.S. Supreme Court issued a ruling which basically said that you can tax through interstate commerce, and firearms are included in this.
Right. Hence, we have all the taxes now on the major sellers that sell on the internet, Amazon or whatever adds sales tax for your state to the sale if you can't prove to them you already paid the sales tax when you ordered it and you paid their state directly. it has to be paid, and when in doubt, you end up paying sales tax in both states. We are looking for a serious problem here in Nevada. Looking just roughly at the magazine ban, how do they know how many magazines you have when they go back and count them to see if you have any more you didn't have before, and how are they marked so you can tell?
Exactly.
What they've gone through in states that have this, it's an impossible thing for the police to police. And there's no way it can be, all it does anyway, who's going to obey the magazine ban? Only honest people. The bad guys are still going to have their high-capacity magazines and 100-round drums and whatever. Anyway, we're very close to time here. I wanted to point out one error in last week's show. I did a story with my guest, Lenny Davis, that included a Stand Your Ground case from Florida. And in the meantime, we have discovered the actual police reports rather than the news story that I was based it on. I hate using one story sources, and I did it. And that story was wrong. It was not a Stand Your Ground case. It made as if the shooter was standing his ground in the article, and reality is the victim was standing his ground on his own property when he got shot, and all he was doing was yelling at his neighbor, and it's going down as a first-degree murder case. Probably will be pled to second-degree murder, but disregard that story. If you saw it last week, it was incorrect. You can check out our recent shows on Fired Up with Bob Irwin. New shows come up. There's about 8 or 9 or 10 of them or 20 of them now on that website. Please patronize our sponsors. We didn't even run any commercials for sponsors on this show. We'll make up for it next show. And Capitalism Wins. You will find a whole bunch of fired up promotion stuff on our website, firedupwithbobiRwinstore.com. And you can get logo, T-shirts, and hats and all that sort of thing. The same with stuff we sell at the gun shows. When watching any media, please hit subscribe when you find our show, and it'll be sent to you every Friday afternoon or Saturday morning automatically. And you can add to the 2,500 so people we have watching that. Thank you for supporting Fired Up. We are right on time. So we'll be back next week. Don is coming back next week. We've got some other interesting stories. But we wanted to get this thing covered about this gun legislation in Nevada. We are about to get screwed. If you're not a registered voter, do so. We have to beat them at the ballot box. Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Bob.
You all have a good evening, and we'll see you next week.